Hello there. Welcome to the first programme in our new series, which in a way is a continuation of the last. In that we ask the question, who cares? And in this series we try to answer that question by looking at people who spend their lives caring for others, less fortunate than themselves. Well, today we consider the plight of those who suffer from appalling housing conditions, and our guest, Jenny Martin, works part-time for Shelter, the organisation which believes that a home is a basic human right and an essential for living a happy, stable life. Also with us to ask the kind of questions I'm sure you'd like to ask for yourselves, a group of young people between the ages of 11 and 13. Well, to help them decide what questions to ask on your behalf, let's look at some film which shows the conditions of dirt and squalor and overcrowding that some people have to live under. The pictures, I think, speak for themselves.
By the time they've got to the Shelter office or whatever, they're absolutely on their last legs. They've got nothing else that they can do. It's the last resort. So all the families are
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
The next programme, Going to Work, which today looks at office work, begins in 2 minutes.
Next week at 10 to 3, there's a new series for teachers in schools and colleges of education called 16+. And now on BBC One, the first of this afternoon's programmes for children, Play School, introduced by Julie Stevens and Johnny Ball.
Here's a house. Here's a door. Windows, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ready to knock? Turn the lock. Play school.
When people are too far away to say hello, they wave. Hello. Have you ever tried to explain what you mean using your hands like this? That means go away. This, come here. That means stop.
Hello. Do you know what day it is today? It's Tuesday. But in France, French people would say it's mardi. It means the same, it's a different word. Mardi. It's really Tuesday. And the month? Well, that's January. But again, French people would call it Janvier. Janvier. It's a bit similar, but it's not quite the same. Now, the number? Well, that's 23. 2 and a 3 make 23. Again, French people would say 23 instead of 23. 23. So today, in France, would be mardi 23 janvier. But here, it's Tuesday, the 23rd of January.
How are you getting on?
I've been learning some French words.
Do you know any more?
No, I don't think so.
Well, some of them are very similar to English words, you know. Take, for instance, the nose. In French, it is nez.
Nez?
Yes.
The nose, nez. What about, trousers? What's the French for trousers?
Pantalon.
Pantalon? Hey, pants. Is it nearly the same as pants? Perhaps that's where pants comes from.
May have been.
Pantalon.
Well, there's some things over there by the sink that are very easy to learn the names of. Come and see.
Let's have a look. Oh, my favourite. Jam tarts.
At 11:15, and now the weather report from Bert Foord.
An anticyclone, still persisting over England and Wales, is slow-moving and is declining gradually in central pressure, thus keeping the strong southerly flow out in mid-Atlantic. For tonight's weather, most places will be cloudy and rather misty with a little drizzle in places, but central and eastern areas of Scotland, with parts of northern England, will have a slight frost tonight and a few local fog patches. Moving on to tomorrow's weather, most places will continue cloudy and rather misty, but mainly dry, but eastern districts of Scotland and northeast England will have some sunny intervals during the day, although most places will continue rather cold.
This is BBC 2. Now, Look Stranger visits the farm of Edward Sneath in East Anglia, where for over 60 years he's kept plough horses.
Goodbye.
A forewarning that on Wednesday the 13th of March, early years at school can be seen at the later time of 4:35. A book called Early Years at School, which accompanies the series, is available from most bookshops, price 70 pence. And 60mm film copies of the series will soon be available for sale or hire, and you can get further information by writing to this address: BBC Enterprises, Non-Theatric Film Sales, Villiers House, The Broadway, London, W5 2PA. Now the time is almost 4:25. The Open University begins at 5:25. Until then, the test card and tone.
Deal.
Mr. Campbell-Adamson's statement has already had repercussions in the election campaign. Over now to David Dimbleby.
Both the Conservative and Labour leaders referred directly to the CBI statement in speeches tonight. Mr. Heath said the government had always been ready to consider amendments to the Industrial Relations Act. Mr. Wilson promised that if Labour won the election, they would repeal the Act as soon as possible. Mr. Wilson, speaking at Brighouse in Yorkshire, attacked the Conservative record on industrial disputes.
The election, according to the Conservatives, is supposed to be about strikes. They repeat they would keep the Industrial Relations Act. Tonight on television we saw that the Director General of the Confederation of British Industries, the Bosses Union, have said that the Industrial Relations Act must be repealed. Even the bosses say. CBI say, the TUC say. Now, the loss of working time due to strikes as a result of Tory policies has been 4 times as much each year as it was under the Labour government 6 years from 1964 to 1970. So my questions on strikes are these. Have you heard anything from the Tories in this election to suggest that they have any idea whatsoever of dealing with industrial relations apart from continuing to embitter them by pitched battles with the unions?
That's figured largely today is Britain's trade balance and the huge deficit announced yesterday. Mr. Heath brought the subject up at his morning conference, claiming that only a Conservative government would have the confidence of the rest of the world in handling Britain's financial problems. At the Labour conference, the former Chancellor, Mr. Roy Jenkins, said the government was saying that every disaster was an argument for its own stewardship. A still worse result would have given Mr. Heath a still stronger claim. Peter Hill put Mr. Jenkins' point to the Prime Minister later today and asked him what he had to say.
Mr. Jenkins ought to understand what the trade figures are about. If he analyses them, he will see that the additional cost of oil, of raw materials and of machinery, which we've imported this January, is about just over 400 million greater than January of last year.
Birmingham City Coroner has ordered an investigation into a transplant operation at a Birmingham hospital, an operation that apparently shouldn't have begun. With the inquiry already well advanced, the coroner confirmed the broad facts of the case this afternoon. Surgeons had started an operation to remove a kidney from a 64-year-old man. He'd been certified as dead, the victim of a road accident. The surgeons found he was alive. They stopped the operation, but the patient later died. From Birmingham, Geoffrey Green reports.
The man, Mr. Michael McEldown.
Now on BBC One, the music and quiz programme, Top Score.
you. Thank you very much and good afternoon. That tune was called Memories of You and is referred to in our business as an oldie. So from one beautiful oldie to another beautiful oldie, Leslie Blair.
I'm not sure whether to say thank you, Brian, or not. Glad you could join us on Top Score. Here's Ginny Lamb and Danny
Hello,
Street.
Leslie.
Hi,
Hello,
listen, have you done any Christmas? The two of us and me. Thank you. I'll see him afterwards. Have you done any Christmas shopping yet?
Me?
Yeah.
I always leave it to the last minute. Leslie, how about you, Dan?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've bought my Christmas present.
Have you? What is it?
One
It's a chess set, because I'm working the board.
Very good. Didn't even get a titter, did it?
Not a titter.
Anyway, I haven't even done my Christmas cards.
Why not?
It's terrible, isn't it?
Why do you not do
Why
Christmas cards?
have I
Well,
not?
talking about cards, I have secreted here on my person a card. Actually, it's not a card at all, it's a letter. But that was all part of the script.
Well done.
And I'm going over now to talk to Brian about it, because I think it might interest you, Brian. And the boys in the band will certainly enjoy it, because this letter came from Mrs. Alma Mamesey in Kingsbury in London, and she's written you a little poem.
Oh, lovely. What does it say?
On Saturday, I went to buy an LP by Brian Fahey, but, alas, forgot his name upon the way. So I came back, dare I say, with an LP by Ray McVeigh. Ole, ole!
Now, it's funny you should say that, Leslie, because actually I bought an LP of Ray McVeigh, so that's two is sold.
Now, from out of nowhere, here's Danny.
Okay.
You came along from out of nowhere. You took my heart and found it free.
To the British Prime Minister, Mr. Wilson. That's tomorrow night. And until then, from Newsday, good night.
In a moment on 2, in Look Stranger, we'll be joining members of the English Place Name Society in their search for the origins and meanings of various town and village names. Then at 8:10, excitement is mounting in the Walton household with the approach of the Jefferson County Fair and also the return of one of Olivia's old flames. The Silver Rose of Montreux winners, the Goodies, entertain with more zany nonsense at 9 o'clock when their office gets buried underneath a redevelopment scheme. And at 9:30, a complete change of mood as Horizon conducts an inquiry into the way in which lead, building up in our cities, might be affecting children's behaviour, and asks what action should be taken if indeed lead is brain poison. News Extra is at 10:20, and at 10:50, Open Door presents the second part of its programme on Asians in Britain. Our Closedown poem this evening, To Those I Will Never Meet, by Steve Turner, is read by Bernard Hepton. And that's our line-up of programmes for this Monday evening here on 2. So now, Look Stranger with the English Place Name Society.